A gentleman whose name has come up on this show so many times, Eric Sauter of Blackheart Sound is here. Hello, Eric.
Hey, Matt. How's it going?
Am I saying your last name correctly? Is it Sauter?
You got it right.
Okay.
Most people say like Sauter or Sauter.
Right. Now, the reason your name has come up so much on the show is a lot of the artists that we've had on the show that I've interviewed over the years have mentioned you and recording with you at Blackheart Sound.
Yeah, I know Slim Volume.
Yep.
Been on here recently. The Night Blinders, to name a few. I mean, even today, Conduit's going to be on.
Yes.
Which is kind of a coincidence. It was not even planned. Julia was telling me about that. And yeah, we just we had finished up some stuff, I want to say last year, and they're putting out a single soon. So
yeah.
I've been working with some people in Manchester for a little bit, that's for sure.
Yeah, Dank Sinatra, right?
Yep.
In fact, I saw pictures of Fredo on I think it was on the Facebook page for the studio, I think. Fredo in there playing guitar.
Oh yeah. Jesse came in, the friend Jesse, and took a bunch of pictures and some great ones. Yeah, you see Fredo all over there.
yeah, absolutely. How long has Blackheart Sound been open?
It's been in the location it's been in, which is on Elm Street behind the Music Mill, for I want to say we're going on 5 years at this point. I think I did my first session in 2019, like April or May.
Okay.
So, but I've been operating, working with bands for quite a bit longer than that. I grabbed a bunch of equipment when I was, I want to say probably around like 2016, and just started like doing it from there. And it's a long story, and but yeah, it's been going on for a little bit, but officially about 5 years.
Excellent. We should mention too, before we go any further, that opening song, that's your band Magnetar, a track called Event Horizon. And really good stuff. I listened to that whole album, Crushed. I listened to that yesterday and just loved it.
Yeah, we did a record. We put it out with this label, Seeing Red Records, in 2022. Yeah, in June. It's a great album. It's great for fans of like heavy metal stuff. It's like I was saying, definitely like adjacent to like post metal stuff, Mastodon. If you're a fan of Mastodon, you like it.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Yeah, really good. Yeah, I think I'd mentioned this to you off air before the show. I'd been aware of Magnetar for a while, but I hadn't made the connection that you were in the band, and I assume you recorded everything yourself, right?
Yep.
You were the engineer and producer.
We did it all there. I did the recording, I did the mixing. I had it mastered by my friend Zach, who works in Salem at God City, and did a great job with it. So,
yeah. Do you have any plans for more I almost said Mastodon, for more Magnetar coming?
Yeah, we didn't do a lot between like 2022 and now, but I'm just getting back and starting to write some more music with the a couple of the members, and we've got some stuff brewing. It's not like nearly the same sort of music. It's definitely gotten to be a little bit more tame.
Really?
Not as heavy. Not as heavy. I'm just kind of feeling something a little bit different these days.
Yeah.
This the last album, Crushed, is a very, very heavy, oppressive, but like kind of beautiful album.
Yeah.
I wanted to go in a little bit more of like a rock direction while still keeping those sorts of elements. So we're kind of feeling that out, figuring out how that's going to materialize. And we got I think we're like halfway through an album right now.
Oh, really? Okay.
In regards to just demoing it out.
Yeah.
And getting the songs ready. So
yeah,
hopefully later this year we'll start, getting those down and hopefully have an album again soon.
Excellent. Does Magnetar ever play out?
The last time we played out was the release show that we did for that LP.
Okay.
We did it as a benefit show over at the Alpine Club on the West Side. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I want to say like a lot of the shows we've done have generally around like some sort of like fundraiser benefit show. So yeah, that was the last one we did, and we haven't really been doing much since.
I would imagine a Magnetar show is pretty intense.
It's a lot. Yeah. I mean, like we have from like the get-go, we were known as like the band that just like brought out like all these ridiculous amps and cabs. I remember I would literally just collect like as many amps and like high wattage amps and cabinets as I could, and just play out. It was for a while it was a two-piece. It was me and a drummer, Johnny Funk, and I would just show up with like a line splitter, plug into as many 100, 200 watt heads as I could, and just like make this like really oppressive live sound. That was kind of our reputation. And it's not to that degree anymore. We actually have like a dedicated bass player, second guitar player.
Yeah.
So, we toned it down a little bit, but it's still a lot to bring out. We're playing with like full stacks and, big 612 guitar cabinets. So it's like, it's a lot. I got to rent the van in order to do that.
That's really cool. I respect that a lot. That's great. Now, as far as, you had posted something on social media recently, and congratulations. You're doing, producing and doing Blackheart Sound, more as like a full-time. I mean, I imagine you're already working a lot of hours doing that, but, you're really going to the next level with it, right?
Yep. For the first few years of this venture, it was just like, it was kind of, I did this in between my full-time job.
Yeah.
Which, it was, it's pretty taxing, having to do that. Cause, I'd be taking, my weekends and then like working with bands.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was, I wouldn't take it back at all, but there's a certain point where, you gotta like really, have some free time in your life. Cause I was just like, doing things like having like between 2 to 4 days off a month, which isn't sustainable in the long run. That's for sure. So, I made the decision to go full on into it. And kind of like just have a part-time job. I do work at the Manchester Music Mill currently, but it needed more of my attention in order to grow.
Yeah. No, that's a great place. I wanted to work there, but I didn't get the call. No, but it is a great place. How long have you worked there?
I've been working for Joe since 2013.
Oh, okay.
I moved to Manchester I want to say late 2012.
Yeah.
And I think I was like working pizza delivery then. And one day I just decided I wanted to work at that store.
Yeah.
And so I went in and I knew who Joe was. I'd shopped there for a while.
Yeah.
And I went up to him and asked him, hey, do you got any openings? He's like, yeah, maybe. Shoot me a resume. So I shot him a resume.
Yeah.
And I went in like a couple days later. Hey, did you look at the resume? No, I haven't. And then I went in like, a few days later, and a few days later, I bugged him.
Yeah.
Heavily. And then he, to the point where he was just like, dude, just, okay, yeah, come in next Tuesday.
Yeah. Excellent. What did you start out doing there? Just sales on the?
It was
on the floor?
just sales. Yeah. I mean, it was it was a pretty small staff at that point. It's grown exponentially since I started. To like a wild operation. I mean, it was just that one building. We had all of our storage for everything inside of there. All of our back stock was in that one building.
Yeah.
And it was like me, him, another manager, and like maybe one other sales guy. So it was pretty small. I was you kind of just did everything there.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah.
You had your hands in a little bit of all that sort of stuff. So, when you're in a small staff, eventually you just start getting more and more responsibility handed to you, whether you're ready for it or not.
Right.
It's trial by fire at that point.
Yeah.
In a very small place. So, eventually I'm holding keys. Eventually, I'm doing like trade deals, quoting out prices with people, and it just kind of like grew from there. And I was, I think I was managing, or had some sort of like manager role about like a couple of years after that. So, and I've been doing that ever since. And it's a great place. I love working there. It's a fantastic organization, and Joe is an amazing guy to work for.
Well, when you talk about how it's grown too, because I remember going in there years ago and it was much smaller. And when I went there for my interview, Craig gave me a tour of the whole place, and I was stunned actually at how huge it is.
That warehouse building. We put that's the building that the studio is in. Joe had purchased that in 2018 and completely renovated it, and that really allowed us to like take our stock to a certain degree, have a dedicated shipping department, have a dedicated receiving area. So it really allowed us to grow even further. It's unbelievable. Joe is I don't think I would be able to do what I'm doing right now if I didn't work under someone like him, because he is just such a hard worker. He knows what to do with a business, and just so dedicated to seeing that growth, making the business succeed, and also taking care of his employees. Like, it's you don't get many bosses like him in this life.
And then so when you started Blackheart Sound officially, did you start recording there, or were you recording at home at first? Or?
So I started by I had a spot down in Morgan Self Storage, and I think
our new sponsors.
There we go.
Small world.
I was there for a while actually, and I think I wanted to record like demos for my band at the time, and so I got myself like I think I had like a small little like 2-track interface, and I had like a Behringer mixer that I would run the mix down to 2 tracks into that. So I would start by doing that sort of stuff, and then word got out that Eric can record stuff. So bands, I would like start working with like punk bands and doing stuff, and I didn't really know what I was doing, but like they'd come over, hey, here's $20 in a 6-pack, let's go for a few hours and see what we can get. So that started, and then I got like an 8-track set up, like some sort of like Personas thing, and I was like, wow, I really like this. I want to learn how to actually do this.
Yeah.
So I just went full in, not really knowing what I was doing. I went out and bought a bunch of equipment, went and got like a personal loan, which sounds crazy, and bought a bunch of like nice mics, like some decent preamps, and I was just like, I'm going to learn how to do this.
Yep.
I'm going to try and find spaces in which I can do this. The second space I had was in the Varick buildings. The buildings that they tore down across from the Market Basket. And
okay.
Yeah, you're familiar with those. I mean, a lot of people had studios in there.
Yep.
A lot of people had practice spaces in there.
I had a practice space in there at one time before Morgan's, before I had a practice space at Morgan's. And so I know exactly the spot. Yeah.
I got in there and I was, I ended up taking over this like giant space that was, it was called the Fuzz Hut. It was like a DIY venue. That a bunch of people I know had run, and they ended up getting out of there, and I took it over, and it was like 3,000 square feet. It was huge.
Wow.
And I just started doing more bands out of there, and kind of like cutting my teeth there and learning how to do this. I think one of the first records I did was for Mike and the Night Blinders. I'd known Mike, I'd from like the Shaskin and everything, and hit me up. Hey, can you do my band? I was like, sure. I gave him like, I was recording for basically nothing then.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, Dave. He's like, all right, we want to do it live. And I'm like, I've never done this before. Like, I've never recorded a live folk circle. So I'm literally, they're an hour coming in, and I'm sitting there on Google. How do you mic up a folk circle? Like, that's where I was. I had all this equipment, and I'm just like learning how to do it practically. Yeah. I never went to school for any of this stuff, so I just threw myself in there.
Yeah.
And I love that record still. It's a great one. It's very raw, but that's really where I started.
Yeah.
So at a certain point, that space became kind of like unusable. I wanted to find a place where I could put money into. It was a spot that only would give me a month-to-month lease, which I'm looking at putting 25 to 40 grand into a spot to build it out.
Right.
You don't want to do that.
No kidding. Yeah.
So I started moving around. I ended up finding a place over at Candia Road, right next to Candia Road Brewing, and rented from them for a while. I know all those people really well. They're great. And operated out of there for a little bit. Did some shows there. Tried to kind of foster a little bit of that DIY space for shows. With people. That was fun. And then when Joe bought the building behind the music mill, he's like, hey, I'll give you a whole quadrant of this place. Do you want it? And it was perfect.
Wow.
Okay, I can rent from my boss. I can, I'll have like it was just like a full blank rectangle to build from the ground up.
Wow.
And that was like the golden opportunity. It was like, yep, let's do it.
Wow.
So, and that's where I've been for the past 5 years.
Yeah.
Really stroke of good luck to get in there, because I'll tell you, finding spaces to do this is extremely difficult. I have bounced around. I have done it's not easy. You're either finding places where you that are like somewhat affordable, but like you have to deal with people around you being noisy, or like them being upset with you. Or you're
that was probably a problem at Morgan's, right?
Yeah. That's why like as soon as I started like being like, hey, I'm going to charge bands, even though it wasn't much, like I'm going to charge people a little bit. I had to get out of there, because I'd start doing stuff, and then suddenly band next to you's rehearsing.
Exactly.
Which, it's a rehearsal space, of course.
Right.
I can't get upset about that, but you got to know where you're at.
Yeah.
So I had to find places. So or you're just like doing really expensive commercial space, and that'll allow you to do that, and it's tough.
Yeah. No, you're in a great situation, and that couldn't have worked out any better, huh?
That's
amazing.
It was a no-brainer. Yeah. Get in there.
Yeah. How long did it take you to get to a point where you felt like, really, because you talked about when you were starting and kind of learning on the fly, which is a really good way to do it because obviously it works. How long did it take you to get to a point where you felt like, okay, I've really got this? Like I'm a legitimate engineer and producer. And
I think it was like about the time I had gotten into that space, maybe like right around there, because it was having the space where I knew how to get the sounds I wanted to.
Yeah.
I knew what I was able to do. I was able to have much more of a controlled environment because I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants in most of the places. Anyone I know had seen any of the places I was at before would be like, yeah, these were whack, Eric. Like, I wasn't dealing with like great sound isolation, and I didn't have like ISO rooms. I didn't have like well-treated places to mix.
Yeah.
So being able to have a good control room that was spec'd out and designed to mix in, having a live room that I could work in, and kind of just like learning how that space worked.
Mm-hmm.
That really got me to where I was at, and learning this by yourself is a hard thing to do because you always have there's always the sense of like imposter syndrome where you're like, am I good at this?
Yeah.
Like throughout the whole way, and then but like at a certain point, it takes a long time. But you just have to silence that. You got to be like, listen, I'm working with people. They're coming back. We're doing records time and time again. The business is going good. Like, yeah, you know what you're doing.
Yeah. That's interesting what you said about doing it by yourself, because it sounds like, because a lot of people who I talk to who do what you do, they had kind of a mentor who helped them and kind of taught them. But it sounds like you didn't have that necessarily.
I wouldn't necessarily say that I didn't have any mentors. I would say that I definitely did have some people who were like decent resources. Biggest one, my good friend Derek Blackburn, who runs a mixing and mastering studio out of Bedford, Mass. From the time I was like, from the Morgan Storage times, I was like, I kind of found him on Instagram. He was a mastering engineer, and I was like, cool, I'm going to follow these people.
Yeah.
And we would always have dialogue, and I remember like he was always a great resource for me. I remember when I first did like one of the first Magnetar demos back in like 2015. I had sent him a track to master, and like I didn't know what I was doing then, and I was like, it was very loud, and he, instead of, coming to me and being like, hey, idiot, turn it down, like, he explained to me why, like, here, this is too loud, here's what you should do, blah, 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 and he was always super helpful, so I could always go to him with if I ever had a question, hey, Derek, I'm running into this problem, what, can you give me some advice?
Yeah.
And I love that because, he was just so humble, had no problem giving me any sort of information that I needed, and we have a working relationship to this day.
That's great.
I send a lot of people his way for mastering. We just worked on a really great record together by this band, Crippling Alcoholism, and it's a fantastic record. And you never know what those relationships are going to turn into.
Right.
8 years, 10 years down the line, you have no idea how it's gonna work. And I'm really lucky to have someone like that.
Yeah, no doubt. Oh, that's cool. What is there a particular project that you've recorded there that was especially challenging or just really unique and kind of outside of your comfort zone? Is there anybody like that?
I wouldn't say that there's much outside of my comfort zone. There's definitely projects that really put me to the test in regards to to how far how far can I take my skills? And actually the project I just mentioned, this band, Crippling Alcoholism out of Boston. We did a record together. They're very, it's very avant-garde, kind of like poppy, dark music.
Yeah.
Kind of their vocalist is kind of in the vein of like Peter Steele, very like, ooh,
yeah,
like low. Yeah. They sound a lot like Swans or early, like new wave, kind of like dark gothic stuff. And, they also mix like these interesting elements of like kind of like off metered, like call it like math rock, or we call it like mathcore.
Yeah.
So this record was really, really unbelievable. It's about an hour long, and there's all these ridiculous elements in it. There's probably, I want to say there's in each song there's probably like 3 or 4 guitar parts, individual guitar parts, on top of like a few layers of guitar synthesizer with keyboard synthesizer, and then all these other ambient elements. So I think by the end of the the session when we started to mix, we were looking at like probably 250 individual tracks.
Oh my God.
Yes. It was not like individual songs, but just like tracks that we're mixing. And that is
wow.
Doing that, it was almost like mixing in like an orchestral piece or mixing like a score.
Yeah.
So that was really cool. What helped out is they had a really great idea as to what they were going for the vibe and what the end product was.
Yeah.
The vocalist and I want to say main songwriter Tony, he came in with full pre-produced tracks. Like here we have like the sound down. We know what we want to do. And mixing stuff like that is I had done a couple projects like that before, and the first time it was like, man, that was tough. But once you do a couple of those, you kind of get in the method of here. I know how to approach this. I'm not going to get overwhelmed by this ridiculous track count.
Yeah,
because I did like a post rock band like that one time. They were like importing like I think it was like 25 to 30 synthesizer tracks per song.
Yeah,
and I remember that was the first time I'd ever done that, and I was like, oh my God, this is wild. Yeah. But after you do stuff like that, it becomes very, very easy. You know how to manage it. Yeah. And it makes the stuff like the other stuff, like the more simple stuff, just like that much easier. Like, wow. Yeah. Like, we're just dealing with like guitar, drums, and bass.
Right.
I know how to mix this.
Right.
Sleep.
Yeah. 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 Cause I have a little bit of recording experience, and just hearing about that, all those tracks, it makes me feel anxious. Just the idea of it, it's like, oh my God. Wow. Have you ever been in a position where you've had to kind of say, to somebody, I think you're doing too much. Not because you don't want to do it, because you're obviously up for the challenge. Mm-hmm. But just, do you ever, as a producer, have to say to somebody, I think, sometimes less is more, and you're trying to put more into this than you need to?
It really depends. I'm a big fan of excess. I love adding a bunch of elements into songs. Yeah. And if people are down to do that, then like, let's go for it. I'm going to try and figure out how we can make the space in the mix for this. If it's something that's like obviously jumbling up the song where like we're getting too many elements, like this piano part sounds disjointed in this rock song, like what are we doing here? It's like off. Then there's things where I'll be like, I don't know if this fits really well, but I'm always willing to entertain the idea of excess, because I think that's what helps in like producing a track and making something interesting. Like I want people to add in elements. I want to foster that creativity and that desire to add more.
Right.
Because the worst thing is we try it out and it doesn't work.
Right.
Hey, this sounds bad. Let's not use this.
Right.
Or hey, this the synthesizer part sounds great. Let's keep it in here.
Yeah.
I think that is what helps make songs progress and have movement and be like very, very accessible to people.
Yeah. So. Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I'm always asking people about their influences, but usually it's I'm asking about musical influences, which I'm happy to ask you about too. But I'm also very curious about producer influences. Is there anybody who you kind of look to as? I mean, obviously, you've made connections like with I forget his name now from Bedford, Mass.
Derek Blackburn.
So he's Derek Blackburn. So he's obviously an influence of yours, but are there any producers, kind of legends in the business, who you really look up to or take inspiration from?
I'm going to go. I mean, my initial one of my first ones was definitely Steve Albini. I love his approach to getting sounds in his studio. His studio is just very interesting and like astonishing. It's seriously a wonder in regards to like recording studios, electrical audio. It's so cool. It's just such a legendary place, and his approach to recording is a little bit more hands-off than I like to be. Yeah. But because his approach is, hey, you come in here, we're going to record your music. I'm not going to do anything to, I'm going to mix it. I'm going to make it sound as good as possible. I like to be a little bit more involved, but I love his approach and like how well thought out his approach is to tracking music and the sounds that he gets. So he was a big one for me for sure. I find that like a lot of the music that I listen to like influences what I like to do, or like how I like to get sounds as well. So I like to find influence in the music as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, so let's talk about musical influences. Who does influence you?
Oh, geez. My musical background. I mean, there's so much. I have a pretty eclectic taste in music. I gotta give some credit to my parents. So my parents, my dad grew up in Long Island in the 60s. And he had seen like a lot of rock concerts. He went to the place called the Fillmore East. So he was seeing like, all the classic rock bands, Zeppelin, Hendrix, The Who, they were all playing there.
Oh my God.
Some of the playbills you should see that he has, you would die. They're unbelievable.
What a great place to grow up in the 60s, huh?
Yes.
Wow. Good for him. That's
awesome. He would tell me
awesome.
about like taking his 4-horsepower boat out to Manhattan and just like going to see these shows. Wow. So I definitely had that sort of background there, and my dad was also like really into new music as well. He was always listening to stuff that was fresh. Like I remember when I was younger, he would like throw on like The Offspring, and stuff like that in the 90s. Yeah. So like he always like he kept his music taste evolving. Yeah. So that's like the rock portion of things. Like I would blame him for getting me into like rock and metal. My mom definitely is the reason why I love pop music. Yeah. She was, in the 90s, car rides with her were like a lot of, 90s catalog, Madonna, Cher, things like, I remember like hearing a lot of like Alanis Morissette. Yeah. There was a Sting solo album that was like pretty big in her car. Yeah. So like she gave me the love for pop music and, those hooks, those songs that kind of rely on that songwriting and then making hits. Yeah. So I've always kind of drifted between those realms. Yeah. Never really trying to get myself all stuck in one thing that I'm listening to all the time. So I would say I listen to like an eclectic mix of like pop, rock, metal stuff, electronica, lots of things. Yeah, yeah. It's interesting, too, what you said about your dad, because Jenny probably already knows where I'm going with this. But my father, he lives on the seacoast, and he's in his 70s, and he still listens to new music. And it's just it's really cool because like he listens to WUNH, which is such a great station on the seacoast. And it's just interesting because it's been a topic on the show on many occasions how so many people, they get to a certain point. I don't know what the average cutoff is, maybe 30, maybe younger. I think the number's like 25. Yeah. Where they just stop, where they just kind of decide, not consciously, but subconsciously, they just kind of decide, okay, I've heard all the music I ever want to hear, and anything after this point I don't like. You're in your 70s and you're just like Leonard Skinner. Yeah, and like you live and die by that, but it's which is fine. But there's so much out there. There's so much to discover. I feel like I'm discovering new bands all the time. Yeah. And well, that's the thing. There's more music than ever, and it's easier to find than ever. So there's no reason for anybody to be getting stuck, but people just do. Yeah. Which is totally fine. If you have bands that you love and you have a genre of music you like, go ahead. There is so much to discover. There's so much to do. And as someone who's recording music, I want to be able to appeal to what someone wants to produce. Mm-hmm. I want to be able to be well-rounded. I don't want someone to come in and be like, "Hey, I have this hip hop track," and I'm just like, "Well, I don't know any of that." Right, yeah. I like to keep up with that with the individual sorts of culture that are surrounded in each genre of music and like what's relevant there. Yeah. Well, what's relevant in pop, what's relevant in hip hop these days, what's relevant in like, heavy metal, what are we doing? Yeah. Yeah. Because so many people from all sorts of different walks of music come to me. Yeah. And it's I want to be accessible to all of that. Yeah. Yeah. Do people typically bring you demos or do you have artists who come to you to record and they're sort of just coming in cold and that they don't have anything recorded, but they know what they want to do. Obviously they know their songs, but they're not necessarily providing anything for you, prior to that. So you're just kind of starting from scratch. Does that ever happen? I'd say it's like, it's 50-50. Yeah. A lot of people come in with pre-produced tracks these days. It's really easy thing to do. Everyone has access to an interface. Everyone's got access to like at least a couple microphones or even the ability to plug into an interface and use like amp simulators. They have. Yeah. For doing that sort of stuff. So, yeah, a lot of times I get the people who come in with like, fully produced, like kind of like demos or like pre-production. I call it pre-production.
Yeah.
Which is so important because it gives me an idea of what they're looking to do for their sound.
Right.
The aforementioned Crippling Alcoholism band, they came in with individual tracks for like drums, guitars, and vocals during the pre-production process.
Yeah.
And so I had a full-on idea as like to what they were going for, what the progressions were going to be in these songs, what we were doing like somewhat roughly in the vocals. And that was great because we were able to kind of like sit down and be like, okay, let's look at the song. Okay, maybe this is too long here. Maybe this bridge goes on for too long. Let's chop this up. It was also like a grid, so we could just like, it was so easy to do. So I would say that's a huge thing for bands to do.
Yeah.
It's really important to when you go in to have an idea, like at least somewhat of an idea, a comprehensive idea as to what you're going to lay down there.
Yeah.
It's the most important thing.
Right.
It saves a lot of time.
Right.
Studio time's expensive.
Exactly.
It's not cheap. And if you're sitting there, I always like I said, I love when we're sitting there trying out stuff and trying out things, but it's better for their time if you try those things out beforehand and you see what fits.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I could not suggest more to bands to be doing that sort of stuff and trying to tackle as much of the pre-production process as possible.
No doubt.
I do it every time when I have a studio at my disposal where, like I said, for the new Magnetar stuff, we're doing pre-production tracks, we're demoing things out. So that way I'm not spending all of my time in the studio trying out these vocal things before before we go in.
Yeah.
I'm doing this stuff now so I can figure out what we're going to do. And then when we go to record the record, I know exactly what we're doing, what the harmonies are, all that stuff.
Yeah.
It's super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, what's the process like as far as bands or solo artists or whomever approaching you? Do they, because obviously, I mean, you don't just work with everybody, right? Because your time is limited. You can't just work. I mean, I'm sure there's probably some people who maybe approach you who aren't ready, and you have to kind of tell them, well, I don't know if you're ready to record. I mean, is that something you run into?
Sometimes you can tell that with when people come in, if like maybe they need to like coach their vocals a little bit more. I do it a lot with like I see it a lot with like hip hop stuff. Sometimes people will come in and they might need some vocal coaching or something like that, or need to work on their rhythm. And I'll be honest with people. I'll tell them like, hey, these are things that you should probably work on before we come back in here and do that. And it can show up in like that sort of realm, or like maybe like if a band's trying out a part and we're doing, like the guitar player just wrote like a lead in this section or something like that, and they're trying it out. We're not getting the right take of it or something. I'll be like, hey, how about next week's session? Well, can you rehearse this lead, and then next week's session we'll come in and we'll do that. It's good to pump the brakes on things when you're like pushing when you're running up against a wall.
Yeah,
that can be very very defeating on the morale when you're on take number 20 and you're not like
right.
There's nothing worse than that when you're just trying something out and it's just like you're just going at it so I will like tell bands, hey, let's rehearse this. Let's try it next time. We'll get it in like 3 takes next time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that definitely happens.
Yeah.
Definitely happens.
Because you could just, I mean, and some people would, you could just take their money and just go with it and not say anything. But in the end, it doesn't help them to do it that way, and it doesn't help you either, because you want anything with your name on it that goes out there, you want it to be of quality too.
Exactly. I try to be as much of a buffer on that end as possible. I've never I've heard so many stories of people recording with people who are just like, yep, that sounds great.
Oh yeah,
great take.
There's a lot of that out there, yeah.
And you never unhear that stuff. So when people say something doesn't sound right, I'm like, let's redo it. If it doesn't sound right to you, you're going to hear this forever. That Magnetar record, there's like a part where you would never notice this, but there's like a part where I like hit a different note than I wanted to, and I was like, you know what, this is fine. It's in key. It's right where it should be. I'll just send it. I kind of like how it sounds a little bit, and I hear that one note every time.
Yeah,
and I'm like, dang.
Yeah,
Should have just done that. Should have just done that quick edit.
You've got to live with it now. Yeah.
And you have to.
Yeah.
Well, like once you put it out, it's out there.
Exactly.
Forever. You can't. There's no going back.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Is there a particular project that's been, or what's the longest project you've done, the most involved as far as I suspect it might be that crippling alcoholism band.
I'm working with a band. One of the members is from here, and one of them, a couple of them are from Tucson.
Oh.
Called Through a Glass Darkly. It's very.
I feel like I've heard that name.
I think it's in reference to like a book.
Oh, okay. That might be why it's familiar.
Yeah, I haven't read it, but I think that's it. They're kind of they call it Zimmer gaze. It's very, very theatrical. Not theatrical, but it's like what do they call it? It's like almost like a movie score.
Yeah.
Very cinematic.
Yeah.
The word I was looking for.
Yeah.
And that was one that like the mixing process was like very, very. That one took a while because we're going back and forth on bouncing out mixes, and they were very particular in regards to what there was nothing spared in regards to like any note, even things as minor as like, oh, move this bass synthesizer down just a hair, like, wow. and we did like all these steps of that.
Yeah,
it sounds amazing. We have a record that is I think they haven't talked about it yet, but I think they're planning on putting it out in the next like year or two.
Yeah,
it sounds amazing.
Yeah.
It sounds unbelievable. You could just like sit back and listen to this and just like it's an unbelievable record. That one was like about a year and a half.
Wow.
You know, I'm working right now. I just finished a record with a Boston-based band called Coffin Salesman, and yeah,
it's a cool name.
Oh, I love it. They're the main songwriter is this guy named Arya. Great songwriter. And you know that process was about a year and a half. You know what we were doing is you know, but I think they had like a UK tour they were doing, like a bunch of shows they were doing, but we were just kind of splitting the production duties between myself and them. So they were doing like overdubs, like piano overdubs at their practice spot, you know, adding in all this stuff, which is a very common thing to do.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people have like decent recording setups at their house, so they will, they'll get stuff recorded, send it out. I'll mix in the stems. It saves them time in the studio. They can kind of, especially for like overdub stuff, because that's where you spend a lot of time just like trying things out.
Yeah.
And seeing what sticks and like throwing things and seeing what sticks on the wall.
Yeah.
And it enabled them to kind of keep the budget a little bit lower. Instead of spending like 3 days like doing this stuff, they could do it on their own time and send it out. So that was that one about year and a half.
Yeah.
Which is pretty typical for a record. I would say a record can take, depending on like, you know, how complex it is, anywhere between like 4 months to a year.
Yeah.
In the process.
Yeah.
It just depends on like everyone's schedule, because everyone's busy, you know, unless you're like a full-time touring band. Being able to like dedicate the time to that is like, you know, you got to carve it out.
Yeah. Is there a project that you're particularly, is there one that I know, I'm sure you don't want to play favorites with your clients, but is there any one project that you're especially proud of, where if you were to listen to it today, you'd go, damn.
I gotta say, you know, I've dropped them a bunch of times, but that crippling alcoholism record was like, just a fantastic record.
I really want to hear that now.
It's great. I think it's called.
Is it out? Is it already available?
With Love from a Padded Room. Yeah, it's out right now.
It is. Okay, I'm going to listen to that today.
It's really
I want to
good.
hear it now.
And I feel like it was because I was given a lot more freedom to be the producer role.
Yeah.
In that one.
Yeah.
It was great. You know, I was able to make calls on like, here's like how these structures of these songs should be. Let's cut out like this stuff. Let's remove this part. Let's add this part.
Yeah.
And they really trust me with that, and it feels good when you're working with a band like that. Yeah, I think you'd like it. It's very very earwormy. It's a very dark sounding record. It is the story of I think it's like 10 songs, and each song is about it's like you're walking down a solitary confinement, and you look inside of one room, and it's like a story about this person.
Yeah.
And it goes from all this stuff from like, you know, these really sinister like murderers to like, you know, some guy who's like, you know, addicted to pills who goes to like a boxing gym. It's like it's everything.
Yeah.
And there's all these wonderful lyrics, and very dark but catchy.
Yeah. All right. Jenny and I will listen to that today.
Absolutely.
Definitely. The time goes so fast. Before we, because we are going to play another song, by the way, at the end of the segment, and I'm going to play a Magnetar track. "Loving You Is Killing Me."
Okay.
It's like 7 minutes, but I don't care because I love it. It's so good. So we'll play that in a moment. But Eric, what should people know about getting in touch with you, keeping up on everything that you're doing? I'm sure we have a lot of musicians listen to the show. I'm sure there's people who want to work with you, either because they know of your work or they're learning of you for the first time or whatever it may be. So how should people reach out to you, submit music to you, etc.?
Best way to do it is through my website, blackheartnh.com. I have a whole contact form there, and you can email me on there. My email's on there. My phone number's there. Text me, call me. Like I'm usually available to answer.
Yeah.
So I love talking with people about their music and like what they're looking to do. So I can be reached at through there at any point.
Excellent. Hey, by the way, where does the name come from, Blackheart Sound? Is there any significance to the name, or?
No. I remember thinking of coming up with it one day, and I was just like, I like how this sounds.
Yeah.
And that was probably around like 2016. There's no romantic story about the name on that one.
Yeah.
I just liked it. It just rolled off the tongue for me. So
yeah, I
figured, hey, let's go for it.
Oh, by the way, you're getting some love in the chat room. Casey Darren just popped in and said, "Love Eric."
Woo!
Yeah, we had what was that? 2 weeks ago?
Yeah.
2 weeks ago. Casey was here, played live for us, acoustic. It was really, really good.
Yeah, Casey's great.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You did the After Image stuff, right?
I no,
or did you?
Brandon Curcio, engineers all their stuff. They did some. They recorded some stuff out of my studio.
Oh, okay.
Brandon Curcio is a good friend of mine.
Okay.
He'll come in for some sessions and he'll rent the studio from me sometime.
Oh, I gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. So
Brandon actually did a lot of work on that Dank Sinatra record. Yeah.
Oh, he did.
I would say he did a big portion of the tracking and mixing on that one.
Oh, okay. That's great too. I love that. There's a particular Dank Sinatra song. Is it "Air Between Us"? Was that recorded there? Do you remember?
So.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember Fredo. He's one of the guests who has mentioned your name. Like I said, it's great to finally have you on because your name comes up quite a bit here, which is wonderful. And we have Conduit coming in the third hour, and they recorded with you, and so really, really good.
They're great. I can't wait to get those tracks out. I mean, I think we worked on those a little while ago. So years back.
Yeah, they sent us a bunch of stuff, and I had to make some radio edits.
Yep.
Didn't have to do that with Magnetar, though.
No, I mean, there's so much screaming you can't even tell.
That's right. I'm not sure what he's saying here, but whatever it is, he definitely means it. Eric Sauter, thank you so much, my friend. This has been wonderful. We'll definitely have to do this again in the future. Like I said, this is and I like this whole album. It's Crush from the band Magnetar, but this is my personal favorite. So selfishly, we're going to end with this one. Oh, I was wrong. It's 8.5 minutes. This is a long song, but I don't care because I love it. So we're going to play it. This is "Loving You Was Killing Me" from Magnetar. Eric, thank you again.
Thank you.